Good morning, I'm Mike Sorosky with Schulte Industries. Today we're going to do a walkthrough video of the startup of a Spartan RWP1935 windrow rock picker combination unit. We're going to do step by step of how to set it up to get it field ready. So this is when you receive your new rock picker in the yard and you're getting it hooked up to your tractor. We're going to go through all the steps to hooking up hydraulics, installing the PTO pump, and doing preliminary adjustments before heading to the field. That's the correct way and the correct orientation. You should be able to read the decals this side up on the side and on the clevis. When you're hooking up, you can also lower your 3-point hitch arms all the way down, give you a little bit more room to work when you're hooking up your PTO pump. Lowering the 3-point hitch arms down as low as they'll go will give you a lot more working room when you're connecting the hoses as well as the PTO drive pump. Once you have that all connected, you can raise them all the way up and lock your 3-point hitch out. Or in some cases, it's best if you have the option to remove the arms. That's the best to avoid any contact with your hydraulic cooling filtration unit. We will remove the jack and put it in its storage position at the rear of the machine. Attach the safety lock pin and fold the arm in. Retract the jack all the way. Keeps out of the way of the mechanism on the bucket dump and the tires. We'll go back to the front here. We're going to put the PTO pump on first. We're going to slide it on the correct shaft. Make sure you have the correct size for whichever pump you've ordered it with. This can be ordered in 540 RPM, small 1000 RPM, or large 1000 RPM option. So make sure you got the correct pump for the correct PTO shaft you're running. You may want to get an assistant for this job. That pump is a little bit heavy and cumbersome. So we'll get it hooked up and then we will put the safety chain on. And we will chain it to the bottom of the drawbar and we will bias the chain pulling forward. It just helps to keep the pump situated on the PTO shaft. Be sure when you slide the pump on that it locks firmly onto the spline lock. The coupler has to be fully in the detent and the pump must be locked on before you can operate. The safety retention chain can be chained through the bottom of the drawbar, pulling the pump forward on the tractor. That chain also serves as anti-rotation, so that's what holds your pump when you engage your PTO from spinning. There's plenty of chain there, plenty of length. It's just to accommodate all different models and sizes of tractors. After that step is complete, we can continue on to hooking up the rest of the connections. Those connections include two sets of hydraulics, one for the solenoid bank, which are labeled with blue, and one for the main reel drive motor, which are labeled and color-coded in red, as well as the zero pressure return line that's required to run the direct drive reel motor needs to be hooked to a no restriction return to sump port on the tractor. Okay, we'll start with the main color-coded blue. These are your main hydraulics that run your solenoid bank function. This includes the wing angle on the windrowers, the wing height, as well as the bucket dump. Put these on your main port or your number one hydraulic or preferred hydraulic in the cab. These will be the ones that you're using mostly. The second set is the red color-coded ones. These ones run the reel motor on the rock picker. So these are the ones that you're going to engage. You're going to need them on a continuous flow. They will run all day as you're picking rocks. As well, on that same circuit was the zero pressure, zero resistance return line that I was speaking of. It's picked out by this female coupler. So the one with the female coupler, that's the one that you need to put on the return line. There's two electrical connectors. This is the electrical connector. Twist lock. It connects to your in-cab solenoid control box that has already been mounted in our tractor. If you're doing a new install, you will need to have that mounted in the tractor, and the wiring should be ran up to the rear of the machine. That's that side. That's the female side, and this is the male plug. We will connect those. Be sure that they're twist lock. Be sure they're together, making a connection. And lastly is the 7-pin ag plug connector for the safety light kit for safety on the road and visibility out in the field. Okay, now that all those connections are made, we're ready to do a test run and just see if our hydraulic functions are all working properly. And we will wing up the machine, remove the lock pins, and we will start doing some of the preliminary setup of the machine. That's where we level the wings or set the angle and just make sure there's no hydraulic leaks before going out to the field. Make sure nothing was damaged during shipping. Be sure the hoses, once the 3-point hitch is raised to the lock position, be sure none of the hoses or the wiring is interfering with the hydraulic PTO pump. So the operator of this machine is now operating the number one circuit, which controls the solenoid bank valve. So he's doing all of the controls inside the cab with the solenoid selector valve. First, he's going to raise the wings and we will remove the lock pins. Be sure to stand clear, make sure you're not underneath at a safe working distance. You can remove the lock pin and put it in its storage position. Once that's removed, stand clear and you can lower the wing down. Once the wing is down, we can extend the angle. Make sure the angle's extended and make sure these lockups are free. We can remove these lockups as we're now in the working position, and we can put them in their respective storage positions. Okay, we have the machine lowered down now. Now we're gonna check and make sure the angle adjustment is working properly, make sure there's no leaks on that. What that does, this cylinder here is responsible for changing the angle and your picking width. So right now it's all the way extended. We're picking at a width of 19 feet. If you angle it in more, it's gonna come forward. It's gonna change your working width to 16 feet, but it's gonna be more aggressive. So in very heavy rock or different soil types, you may need to become narrower and more aggressive, or if you have a restriction of width. The total outside working width is about 19.8, but the working width is 19. Narrow it up. Everything works good there, so we're gonna go to the widest picking width, which is 19 foot. We're gonna get them to let the wings down the rest of the way. Let the cylinders down all the way so that they go into this float lug section. Then we're going to adjust the gauge wheels. Once those cylinders are fully extended, we could start by adjusting these gauge wheels to get the machine level. Right here, this tool is to operate the ratchet jack. It's stored on the machine. Inserts in there. Simple pin on. And then you can select your direction. We're lowering down the gauge wheel here. So there we have it contacting the ground. We're going to apply enough pressure to level out this wing. As you can see, the wing is raising. You want to have it set so that the outside is a little bit lower, so the distance from here to the ground is a little bit lower than the intake, than the exhaust discharge side of the windrower. You want that side a little bit higher so that as you're bringing the rock in, the rocks are coming off the drum evenly and the reel can pick them up. Once that's done, finished adjusting, you can put the adjustment wrench back here into its storage position. From there, we can raise the bucket and reel stops. This is the reel adjustment up here. So there's a stopper, one on each side. It's already raised and that's loose. We will remove it and put it in its storage position. All of these locks have a storage position on the machine. The intent is that the stoppers will be stored with the machine, eliminating getting lost, eliminating them ending up in a tractor cab, hooked to a different tractor or missing. So try to always store them on the machine. From there, we can lower down the grate. You'll see as he operates the cylinders, those two cylinders up top are going to control the grate, as well as this entire carriage system, this black carriage system. That is what holds up the inside discharge side of the windrower. So the gauge wheel is controlling the outside. The inside is controlled by this carriage system, which is hooked directly to the grate and the reel assembly. We can just get a video as we move that. You'll see as the grate comes down, the windrowers move as well. I'm going to point out this so you guys can all see and understand better how this system works. As the grate goes down, you could see these are your spacers and your adjustment that sets the windrower height in relation to the grate. The grate cylinders again control everything. So as they move, this moves, and this is where your height is set. As he lowers it down, we'll see this will come loose and we can adjust this height. Lower the grate down. See how that's moved and those have become loose? We can adjust this height by removing or adding a cylinder stop. We're going to remove one and we can store it right here. Make sure when you're adjusting this system, make sure you are removing or adding the exact same amount of spacers to each side. So we got two thick ones. We got to make sure we have two thick ones on there, or else you're going to have uneven pressure on the windrowers. We can now raise the grate and you'll be able to see we've changed the difference between the grate and the exhaust side or the discharge side of the windrower. We've changed that proportion. That's a little bit of what you have to set when you get to the field and you know your rock conditions and your field conditions. You have to adjust that and adjust for your scenario to make sure that works properly. Make sure you're not bringing in too much dirt. Make sure you're getting the right amount of rock in there. One other feature on the Spartan RWP1935 that's carried over, there's a couple features actually, but one of the main ones is the grate float. That's this lug right here where it contacts here. That's the ability for it to float up. So if you get rock under the grate or an obstacle, it will float up and it won't cause any damage to the grate. We can lower the grate down and we can show you how that'll float. So you got that much. Right now we have the grate blocked with an obstacle. So now we're showing you have that's floated up there to avoid damaging the rock picker. As you move the rock picker, as he moves the grate up and down, you can see this heavy duty walking axle setup. It has two of these 16.1 tires on, 16.5 L, 16.1. Both of those tires are able to walk and kind of oscillate and follow the ground. So that helps the unit follow the ground better because it's a little bit longer unit. So when you're going over hills and knolls. As you can see, now that we have the windrowers leveled off with the gauge wheel and we've set the middle carriage setting, you can see our cylinder for the wing lift is in this float lug, which is where it's supposed to be. Make sure that this cylinder is extended all the way so that when you're working in the field and you have uneven terrain, this has the ability to float down or float up. This can move freely according to where the gauge wheel is riding along the ground. When dumping the bucket dump height is greatly affected by the position of the grate. Right now we have the grate in the raised position. If we dump the bucket, the dump height will be about 6'6". When we lower down the grate to the lowest position, it raises the dump height from 6'6" to 8'6". If you require more than 8'6" dumping height, we have an optional spacer kit which bolts in here. You unbolt this current walking beam and you install a spacer which gains you 4 inches of dump height. We can illustrate the dump height right now in low or in high. The grate has been lowered all the way down. That will be the maximum dump height available, which on this machine without the optional spacer kit will be 8'6". All pivot points, as we're waiting for the bucket to raise, we'll talk about some maintenance items. All the pivot points on this machine are greasable. They all have grease zerks on them. Bucket, cylinders, the walking axle, all of your reel bats are greasable. Wherever you see a pivot point, there will be a grease nipple on there. Safety light kit is standard equipment on this unit. That will be the full dump height of 8 foot 6 inches of 3.5 cubic yards. That's the lower dump height of 6 foot 6 inches if you have the grate in the raised position. Again, as you move the grate, you could see how the machine moves proportionally. So the grate controls a lot of your dump height as well as the working height of your windrowers. Up here on the hitch by the solenoid valve bank, there is a couple different flow control. The two that come out of this flow divider, those come right out of the pressure system controlled by the PTO drive pump. So these two are the ones, those control the speed of your windrowers. So this one will be the left, this one will be the right. This third one is controlling the reel speed. So that's the speed of the rock picker reel. And if you have a tractor, which most will, that have a flow control in the cab, feel free to run this in the wide open position, and then you can control your reel speed from in the cab. You don't have to rely on this. This is only for tractors without the cab mounted flow control. As well, on the PTO drive system, this is the pump, this is the cooler. It has a cooling radiator in there. It has a filtration system, as well as temperature of the oil and level of the oil. Once you get your machine, before you go to the field, make sure you're running the PTO pump, which removes all the air or anything that could have been, the level could change from factory when we pre-assembled it. Make sure that you have adequate amount of oil at the full cold before you go to the field. All of this stuff that we've talked about today in this startup video is also included in the operator's manual. Every machine we produce comes with an operator's manual, and all the information will be inside of there, as well as the PDI forms and the warranty registration that needs to be done by your dealer before the machine goes to the field. Under this cover, you can see where this cover is, and we can zoom in. This is the solenoid control valve block. So this has 4 solenoid valves. This is what your switch box controls from in the cab. So all of the functions on that cab controller are done here. So this one of them will do your windrower height or your angle, your wings, your bucket dump, and your grade height. If you have any issues with any of those functions not working properly, say if the bucket won't move, but the rest of them work, this is where the issue will be, is in this solenoid valve bank. Once that's connected and your number 1 hydraulic is actuated, you do not need to move your hydraulic lever anymore. All controls can be controlled by the electric over hydraulic switches. On this machine, there's two separate hydraulic systems. So we have the two sets of hydraulic hoses that are running from the tractor. So like we discussed before, one is running the solenoid bank valve, which does all your hydraulic functions other than the reel drive. And that's what the second set of hydraulics does. They do the reel drive, they drive the reel, and this is the return hose for the reel. These two large heavy hoses that are connected to the PTO drive pump, that is a separate closed loop system that is hooked to your cooler filter system, as well as your flow controls, and all that is responsible for driving is the windrowers. So you got your left windrower and your right windrower. Those are both protected by the hydraulic cushion valves, which are mounted on the motors. But all that drives is the windrower. So if you're ever troubleshooting and you have trouble with your windrower on the left or the right side, it's not connected to the tractor. It's something to do with the closed loop PTO drive system. In here is the windrower chain. This is the chain that drives the windrower. You got a hydraulic motor mounted directly here with a cushion valve on it. This is an adjustable cushion valve. This takes all the strain out of there. Here we also have on the chain, on our heavy duty 80 chain, we also have Rosta chain tightener. So this is a spring loaded tightener. You torsionally tighten that and then install the lock bolt. On the end, it's hard to see, but you could see that there's some torsion and there's a degree on the end. That's what keeps your chain tight. When adjusting or doing any maintenance to the drive chain on the windrower section, this tool right here that's mounted on the machine, that's the Rosta wrench, we call it. That wrench right there fits over this square portion, and it allows you to remove the tension that's on here. You pull the tension, remove this indexing bolt, and then let the tension go when you loosen the center bolt. That'll allow you to loosen the chain, whether you're installing a half link or removing a half link, or simply just taking it apart to do some maintenance or check some bearings. Again, all those tools are mounted on the machine so that they stay with the machine. The hope is that they don't get lost in the shop or lost in another tractor, or you happen to trade the machine off and they go missing for the next operator. Right here we have the grade height adjustment. This is a visual gauge from the tractor cab that you can look at this reflective decal, and it'll show you if you're either in A, B, C, or D. Once you have that visual set and you've done some of your preliminary settings in the field according to your conditions, then we have these cylinder stoppers. They're along with every machine. They're on the side here. You can adjust these and set that height so that if you're going through the field and you have to go up or a little bit down, or if you're dumping the machine and you want to use the high lift portion of it, when you come back down, you'll always come to the exact same setting that you have, because this will be on there as a stopper. So if you're set on A and you fill this with stoppers, when you come back down after every time you lift or you go over an obstacle, you're going to come back down to that setting. That about sums up the pre-setup that you can do with your Spartan rock picker before you head to the field. Like I said, all of these settings and adjustments are preliminary, so they should be done once they're hooked to your tractor, either in your shop or in your farmyard or bin yard or construction site. Every situation's going to have a different final setting, like your height on your windrower discharge or your grade height. That's all going to vary according to your soil type, the amount of rocks, what kind of trash you're trying to clear out of it, how the ground was prepared. So this video is demonstrating all the preliminary adjustments you can do and some of the final checks that you should do before heading out to site. As we wrap up this preliminary setting, workshop, we're going to just show you how we finally fold it up when we're all done setting it. We'll put in the safety lock pins on the angle, on the wing lift, and on the grate. We could put the angle ones in right off the get-go. It's already in the widest transport width. Okay, the angle is locked up now. Now we can raise the wings. We'll raise the bucket or the grate first. That brings up the carriage and it brings up the discharge side of the windrowers. That prevents them from gouging when you put the wings up. Those are installed. We can now wing up the windrower wings. Stand clear. Once the wings are up, walk in at a safe angle from the front and install the pins. After that, we can release the hydraulic pressure so that the wings go down, and that'll release all the hoses so we can disconnect the tractor. That concludes the preliminary setup for the Schulte Spartan RWP1935 rock picker windrower combination. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can go online and view the video at schulte.ca, or you can look up our YouTube channel.